good to see everyone this morning, and we're going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Community Redevelopment Agency Board to order. Mr. Interim Executive Director, are there any agenda modifications?
Mr. Chairman, we have no modifications at this time.
Okay, item 3, presentation by the Chair of the Citizen Advisory Committee, Mr. Eric Johnson. Is Eric here this morning? Oh, yeah, there he is. Good morning, Mr. Johnson. Come on up and give us a presentation as Chair of our Citizen Advisory Committee. Thank you so much for being here and for the service that you provide to the city in that position. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. Apologies for not being a little bit better prepared, but I would to thank this board for its work thus far in, I guess, picking up from what the previous board left off. We appreciate the swift decisions and the activity to move things forward for our neighborhoods. One of the things the CAC has not had a quorum our last meeting or two, so we don't have official recommendations at this time. But I would want to bring back to your attention something one of our colleagues brought up about the expansion of the district. And that is that with this expansion, it is the sense, I think, of the board and many of the citizens, or excuse me, the council and many of the citizens, that with this expansion of the district, that funding will be rediverted to these areas. We would ask that if this board is not going to reconsider that expansion, that you do prioritize the areas that have been waiting for development first before directing funding to those new areas. I think this is important to address the needs of the community. We have some things that we've discussed. I think this referred to as the block by block initiative that is going on about 2 years, and we've yet to see some credible work on the ground. That is, not saying that work isn't done in the office, but we're talking about things that people can touch and feel. I'm reminded of some comments that I hear from the community, and that is there's still no sidewalks on the D streets. Some of these things that I think shouldn't take as long as they're taking, and we would hope that funds are not redirected to other areas before addressing long-term concerns of the community. As it relates to restructuring of the board, we are interested in understanding what the sentiment of the board is as far as whether to add members or not to the board. We do think there should be a community component. How that looks, we are yet deliberating that. As far as your search for a new executive director, we would encourage you to really consider someone with redevelopment experience or, I guess, private experience in the redevelopment area. I noticed in reviewing the CAC website as well as the DRC website that there is a interesting contrast in that there is a heavy emphasis on those with redevelopment experience with the DRC, and the CAC, the emphasis is on community involvement. Mm-hmm. This will continue to contribute to the lack of development, in my opinion, not the council. This will contribute to the lack of development in the areas that most need it if we don't have the voice of developers and investors. Thank you.
Okay, Eric, thank you so much. Let me ask you, though, what, in your estimation, is the reason that you all aren't able to get a quorum for conducting business?
Well, you're well aware we had the workshop back in April, which kind of preempted our meeting. We had meetings set up in January for the remainder of the year. And so with those preemptions, sometimes that makes it difficult for people to readjust their schedule.
Okay. Do you all have any vacancies at this point?
I think we do have 2 vacancies. That's something we are looking to address straightway.
Okay, all right. Because we certainly, you know, depending on how we move forward, we're going to depend on the advice and recommendations of the CAC as we move forward. So we want to make sure you're in a posture to be able to, in a timely manner, give us that kind of feedback. Because we want us all working in concert and moving together at the same time. So let us know if there are appointments that need to be made. We'll get that done as expeditiously as possible, you know, when those recommendations are made.
We are looking at that. Actually, we were asked about that just last week, and so we still have to kind of digest that information.
Okay.
But we do know, I think it's 2, if I'm not mistaken, vacancies that we have on the CAC, and there are some others that, for whatever reason, have not been in attendance.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner, board member, should be board
Diane,
member?
yeah,
Board member.
Diane.
Board member Williams Cox.
Along those same lines, I've attended the CAC meeting, so I'm familiar with kind of how it goes and how it has been going. If there are folks who are assigned or appointed to some of those positions and they're not serving, or they're
Yes.
not coming, we need to know that as well, because we don't need anyone holding the CAC hostage by not being there.
Correct.
So we need to know who those individuals are, the slots that they're in. I've looked at that list, and it's very specific as to who fits into those slots. And I know that one of the vacancies, I think is vacant now because the person moved away, is Capital City Chamber. And I think that Katrina Tuggerson is going to do something about that, about getting someone there. But we need to know the other vacancies, and we also need to know the non-performers, so
Right.
that we can do some things there. And the CAC is also, is that the treasurer clerk also manages the vacancies there as well?
Yes.
Yeah, so we can operate through the process that we have here to make sure you have a full engaging and enacting committee. Because in the discussion about having a citizen to join the CRA board, it's going to be very important that those citizens come with the energy and the backing of a full CAC. So we've got to make sure that we have folks who are not just showing up every now and again to raise a little cane, but coming to actually help move this process forward. So if you can help us along those lines as well.
Yes, we wholeheartedly agree with those sentiments. As a matter of fact, we would hope by the end of this gentleman's tenure that we do have a kind of an onboarding process to help new people overcome the learning curve. We have quite a few priorities and things that are necessary, and it's kind of trial by fire sometimes getting in this work. So we hope to make sure that's established before we turn loose of our tenure.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, let me do a follow-up question. It's probably to staff. I know we have a listing of sidewalks and projected dates, and for you to say that you hope we eventually get to it in essence, what is the time frame, or where does it fall for us to look at these streets? If you don't know off the top of your head, that's fine. I just think that you need to know that so you're not thinking it's next week and it's next year. So
Well, that has been the case with a lot of the, I guess, things that we have brought. Sometimes we don't, we get responses back, but they are not clear as far as firm time frames as to when things will be done. We realize we're dealing with government, and that moves slow, but we think we can move a little swifter.
Okay. Let me ask our interim executive director if he could address that.
Absolutely. So as you recall, I believe in earlier workshops with the budget, we've had discussions where we have over $109 million of sidewalk needs in our community with, I want to say, about $50 million programmed over time. What we've asked to do is separate what are available funding sources for some of those projects, those being inside the CRA, and see if we can't pull those out and be a part of those that we complete. As the city manager has indicated to you, we're going to do 10 sidewalks a year. So we're trying to pull those out and see what we can accommodate in the CRA with CRA funding.
The other thing I would bring to you all's attention is that some of those D streets are not amenable to sidewalks. They're so narrow that if you put a sidewalk in there, it's going to take half the street. So that's the other issue that we're looking at as well. So it's not like all of those streets have been neglected. It's just that they are not, because they are so narrow, you couldn't put a sidewalk through
This is
there.
true, and I think most of the community understands that. It's more of a lightning rod, I guess, to kind of draw attention, because
Sure.
that's not the only area, but that area has seen some concentration of city efforts where the city has bought parcels. There are properties and several that are vacant, and these are the types of concerns because there has been interest there, and so that's why we continue to emphasize those areas. We're still looking for and desiring a rehab program, a genuine redevelopment program. The will of the people has been to own their community, and we would hope that this CRA board would be an agent to drive that forward. We desire to see there are properties that are owned by the city that we think should or could be transferred to the CRA to promote affordable housing and redevelopment of the community.
Yeah,
And so these are the types of things that we are hoping that this board will begin to address. We're ready to work with
Well,
it.
we are going to follow the lead of those groups that are now working on those plans for Frenchtown. And that's what we're hoping will come to us, and I'm sure we'll hear some of that this morning. But we've got the placemaking group that's already working on some plans for Frenchtown, and that there may be one or two others, but we certainly want to follow the lead of how we're putting together those plans in the community. I see Keith in the back. I know that they're moving forward through the Bethel Development Partners with their proposed development. So that is happening at this point. We don't want to just come in and, without a plan in place, just do things uncoordinated. We want to make sure everything is coordinated and that those issues do get addressed. But we certainly hear where you're coming from.
Thank you. We agree with that, and I guess the only thing is that if the city or CRA doesn't take the lead on acquiring these properties, they will be gone. That's the point we're trying to get at.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Well, let me get the mayor, and then I'll come back to you.
Mr. Johnson, good morning. First of all, let me apologize for walking in a little late during the middle of your presentation. I'm sorry about that. So you touched on a couple of things that I also want to comment on because I think we share a common interest. I know that the CRA is truly dedicated to redevelopment, changing the scope of the CRA, which we have done, focusing on infrastructure improvements and redevelopment to be able to move forward. Specifically, when we talk about sidewalks, and I want to go back to the D Street sidewalks, I think it's very important, and maybe it's even worth having a joint meeting between the Citizens Advisory Group and this group in a workshop so that everybody understands process and how this works. It's not as easy as the city of Tallahassee just going in and putting in a sidewalk. In fact, we have to have the land donated because the streets are so narrow from every property owner on those streets. Herein lies an issue. If you have one or two property owners that do not want to donate the street, donate the land necessary to build a sidewalk, the entire project halts. And then the city or the CRA is faced with one of two issues. Either walk away from the idea of a sidewalk, or do we entertain eminent domain for a specific stretch of land on a sidewalk, which is not popular at all in neighborhoods, okay? So I think we did a survey not too long ago, specifically in the D streets, each property owner to see who would be interested in moving forward with sidewalks or not, okay? It is time for us to take that survey, dust it off, bring it back. If there are people that were not in favor of sidewalks at the time that were property owners that would prohibit us from completing the sidewalk, it's time to revisit. It's also going to take a true community effort to get these type of infrastructure. It's different repairing a sidewalk that's cracked versus putting in new sidewalks that require the acquisition of a strip of land to be able to build. And when we have neighborhoods that have been around for a long time and the parcels are a lot smaller, you know, a sidewalk is a big deal. Sidewalk could take, you know, a full tenth of your property at the front, and some people aren't interested in that. If you have a fence up, it would require moving fence. So it's also a public relations issue as well. Really getting down on the lot by lot level and explaining, this is what we would do. This is how it would benefit the community. This is what we're asking for. This is specifically the amount of land we're talking about. So it's not so much just inaction on behalf of the CRA or the city or an unwillingness to move forward, which I think that we are very much willing to move forward with proper infrastructure. We just have to have everybody on the same page, including the property owners, on all of the affected streets if we're going to put in the new infrastructure. I think you have a commitment, a unanimous commitment from the CRA to move forward and obviously work with the neighborhoods to do so. But I think those are the next steps, and I think that if the Citizens Advisory Committee and the CRA board are all on the same page and understand the process, then together we can work with the neighborhoods in order to be able to move forward. I also agree with you and the chairman that as we are putting this plan together, and we have said this before, I think it is time to literally, within our defined boundaries, to go lot by lot, street by street. Identify the difference between commercial redevelopment and residential redevelopment, which we do have programs for facade improvements within the CRA. There are some properties that should be on the historic property list that we have not identified that we need to identify, and that adds definitely to the fabric of communities. There are some houses that we need to save and help out with foundation work or facade improvement. Then you have properties that might truly be abandoned and neglected. They are beyond saving. And yes, we need to move forward as a community to tear those houses down and rebuild affordable housing. Commissioner Matlow's had a great idea that I support about creating a land bank where the city would move forward with the acquisition of that property, tearing down those properties, working with a Habitat for Humanity or whatever the other organizations are that play in this space, and building a new, great product that adds to the neighborhood. In order to do that, though, we're really going to have to get on the ground level. And again, I think it's lot by lot. We've talked about this. Lot by lot, block by block, identifying all the incredible assets of the community, literally on the street level, identifying where we need to provide assistance and help to repair and remodel, and where we just need to take acquisition and rebuild and start anew. And I think that this will be part of the movement as we're also putting together the plan.
Right.
What was previously created through the Frenchtown Neighborhood Plan and what we will be adding to it. And I think it's an exciting time. I really do.
Yeah.
But thank you for your service as the chair as well.
Thank you. Now, if I might just readdress, you reminded me of something you mentioned about the historical elements of the community. There's been a long-standing request for acquisition of the Lincoln Center to be a part of the district. And it's kind of a contrast that we can expand into broadening the district and not secure an area that's surrounded by the district. So these are some of the concerns, and not to throw this out at the last minute, but I just want to make sure that this was voiced in your hearing so that you can take it under consideration as we move forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Can I touch on that real quick? On the old Lincoln High School?
Well, let me get
Sure.
Commissioner Williams-Cox, and then we'll come back to you, Mayor.
Before she forgets. I wanted to say that I know that a lot of this work has already been done, and I don't want to discount the work that has been done,
Right.
and I don't want to start over
Right.
either. We want to. I'm interested in us plugging in where we need to plug in, and not send you out on a wild goose chase, because that's not what this is. This is a new day. We're trying to get those dollars where they need to be, so that we can see the improvement in our communities. And so I think that it is fair to say to you that if at any point the CAC or any member of the CAC or the neighborhoods that are working together to come up with one plan, if you find the need to either reach out to any of us, reach out to us if we need to come to you to help provide some clarification or to provide some information, let us do that and not let it fester.
Right.
Because I know that at the last CAC, you didn't have a quorum, so you can't come to us today with recommendations.
Right.
So what we need to do is to make sure we get you stocked back up so that you can bring
Right.
recommendations, so that we then have a way to move forward and to act. And I too support, and I have to look at our attorney to determine how we can do this, but I too support putting the Lincoln Neighborhood Center and that whole, the baseball field and all of that into the CRA district. That, to me, is a severe gerrymandering that took place there, and it should not be. And there may be good reason for it, but we need to find out what that reason was. And that school has been repurposed as a community center. So we need to make sure that it gets the attention that it needs to continue serving folks there. My son played on that baseball field, Lee Park. So it is a community jewel if it's handled properly, and I know it's attached to the Lincoln Neighborhood Center. So I, for one, am looking forward to making sure that that community is made whole by including that historical building there and restoring some, keeping the pride that's already there going. So I commit to seeing what we need to do to try to make that happen.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams-Cox. Mr. Mayor?
Okay, and
Mr. Matlow.
that is exactly what I was going to address, because I want everybody to take a deep breath and let's talk about the Lincoln Center. There is specifically a reason why Lincoln School was not put officially into the CRA, as I interpret it, is because it is zoned and operated as a government building. It's the exact same reason when the downtown CRA was created, none of the Capitol complex or City Hall or the courthouse was included, because CRA dollars are not used specifically for government buildings. It's not like the downtown CRA would approve for a grant physically for the Capitol building. It's this weird quandary because the Leon County School District owns the property, and they own what I call the old Sale High School.
Yes.
And because the field behind it is is it zoned government operations or open space, Wayne?
Open space.
Open space. So when you create these CRA districts, by zoning itself, government operations and government open space is never considered an official part of a CRA district. Not for any malicious reasons, it's just you are not going to have a scenario where one governing entity, the CRA, is going to give money specifically to improve the assets of another government building from another jurisdiction. Am I correct on that, Madam Attorney? So when we talk about the planning of Frenchtown, absolutely. When we talk about the future use of that facility, absolutely. When we talk about how it fits into the overall character, absolutely. But don't think that it was specifically drawn out of the CRA in the gerrymandering for anything other than the fact that it is owned by the school board, and the CRA does not spend I would rather spend money on Brevard Street, on other areas. I'd rather spend money on residential housing facade improvements and allow the school board to truly address the issue of the old sales school, right? Not the first Lincoln High School, but the sales school, and what we're going to do. And we need to have these conversations, and I have had these conversations actually with the superintendent and with the chairwoman of the school board about the future use of both the park and how we can improve the park, but also the sale aspect of that property as well. It needs to be part of the planning, but that's why it was not physically part of the CRA.
And they should have been told that. Apparently, they did not know that.
Well, I think back when the lines were drawn, whoever drew the lines at the time, I was not around, maybe just failed to explain that to the residents. Yeah. So, Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, and thank you for presenting today. I hope we get the quorum situation worked out soon so we can move forward. I want to go back to the D streets. I know we're doing additional sidewalk projects at the city of Tallahassee. Looking at the list, both Dent and Dunn, I think are ranked 12 and 13 on our list, and then Dewey, and then I think it was another portion of Dunn are in the 30s. So I'm wondering if there's a way we can leverage the CRA resources with the city of Tallahassee's resources and try to combine these four, where the city does half, maybe the CRA looks to do half, so we can really impact the neighborhood. So we're not just putting a sidewalk, but we're creating walkability from different residential areas to the urban centers in Brevard Street and Old Bainbridge.
concerns me is that all of this should be part of the plan that comes back before us, rather than us piecemealing, talking about just sidewalks are not going to change a community. It will certainly have an effect, but sidewalks themselves will not change the community. I think we need to wait until we come back with the plan that is being developed for the Frenchtown area so that all of this is included in a plan that we can see going forward. And I agree that, it's to the point where we do need to see some action, but I don't want to see us just, put a sidewalk down and then some other improvements have to be made and you have to go in and pull the sidewalk back up. But we have a plan that lets us move forward, addressing all of the issues, the housing, the sidewalks, the lighting, the streetscaping, the landscaping, that all of that comes to us in one plan, and then we begin to move forward from there. But certainly the sidewalks would be a part of that plan. And like I said, both, because the other issue that's important for us to know too is sidewalks are $1 million operation. They aren't cheap. And so we certainly don't want to use all of the CRA money just for sidewalks. Like, as you mentioned, Commissioner Matlow, leveraging the resources of the CRA with what the city is doing, which would be us, and we've got a budget process coming up, and we can address that as well, how we fund the sidewalks in that D block.
Mm-hmm. I largely agree with that, and just as these D streets are already on the list,
Yes.
time is of the essence, so to speak, to get this plan done, so they line up together, and and I'm just wondering, and maybe it is part of that plan, and we're marrying those together, but just to maximize the impact of both investments at the same time.
Exactly. Agreed. Commissioner Williams-Cox, and then
And this is
Commissioner
my final comment, I promise.
Bryant. Okay.
I agree with what you're saying about the plan, but the sidewalks would not need to be a part of the plan if they were already there. And I think that we have, they have been, where the sidewalks are needed have already been identified, and we have no idea when the plan will come. I just hope that we're not going to just wait for the plan to start looking at how to go ahead and start putting in sidewalks where they're needed for safety reasons and for walkability and for, as a part of our renewable energy plan that we're doing, we're trying to get more people out walking. So I would hope that we would not wait until we had a complete concrete plan to start working on sidewalks, because if the sidewalks were already there, they wouldn't need to be a part of the plan. And we're asking neighbors and community members to bring us a plan for beautifying the neighborhood. And we already know that sidewalks and lighting is a very important piece of that. So I'm hoping that we can look at possibly doing some of that prior to the plan coming. Okay.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
We do have a redevelopment plan already, is that not right?
Yes.
And so
Yes, sir.
Yes.
these types of issues, aren't they able to be addressed through that redevelopment plan already?
Right.
Okay. So I'm just trying to understand, what is the additional planning? Is that for more specifics, or what is the purpose for the additional planning if we have a redevelopment plan already?
Did you have a question, Commissioner Bryant?
Yes,
Let
I
me get Commissioner Bryant, and then I'll come back to you, Mayor. And we'll get you an answer to that. Mr. Johnson.
My comment really kind of tracks what you just said, that there is a plan. I think in the last meeting, we talked about the plan was it was old, and that we were updating the plan.
Right.
Is that, I think.
Yes.
So
Hold on.
if it has been updated and it needs to be implemented, then wherever it is should be a basis for moving forward. I think that we cannot just there are a lot of things that need to be done, but it definitely needs to be integrated and planned out and communicated such that you know when to expect. And as for the sidewalks, I thought we had agreed upon a set of sidewalks that would be put in place, whether they're on the D streets or some other streets. And my original question was, what is the date, what year, something that provides a framework for you to know when that will occur? Now, the mayor has laid out several things that must happen in order for us to target in on where sidewalks go and who has to agree to what.
Right.
And that's critical. So when we start to know, that's the whole process of planning. What's involved to getting to an end result? We know where to start and what to do. But I don't want to wait 10 years from now and we're still talking about some sidewalks.
That's,
And I think that's your point.
yes.
So that the question, and I think the mayor laid it out really, we need to go ahead and start in a process that we know needs to be A, B, C, and D. And I'm not an expert in any stretch of the imagination on how do you put down sidewalks. However, we do have experts that should be working with you, with the community, to lay out the details such that you know and we know. And I think the mayor laid that out, things that I have no clue about. But if they need to be done, we need to get started from where we are to get to where we want to go.
Yes, that's,
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
So, yeah, you're absolutely correct, Mr. Johnson, and here's what I would suggest, okay? You do have a plan. It is an older plan that was created long before we were elected.
Right.
It would behoove us to take that plan, run it one more time formally through the Citizens Action Committee to make sure, okay, that we are on target and we're not leaving anything out, okay? From there, it is important for the Citizens Advisory Committee and for us to work hand in hand. I think that from an infrastructure standpoint, it's a three-point movement going forward. Let's get specific. First and foremost, in the plan, where does it designate correcting existing sidewalks versus the construction of new sidewalks? When it proposes the construction of new sidewalks, it goes back to my earlier comment. We need the advisory committee to help us. We need to get into the neighborhood. We have to go house by house to make sure that everyone that lives on a proposed street with a new sidewalk agrees. Because, Eric, what happens is, if you get one or two residents that say, yeah, no, you're not building a sidewalk in my front yard, we come to a screeching halt, and we have to address that. So in order to physically move forward with new infrastructure, we've got to do this. We should also, as a city, go through and evaluate all the roads within the defined geographic area to see what shape they're in. And I would literally triage. Great shape, needs some improvement, needs immediate help. We put together the list for repaving the streets in geographic areas. We set our priorities. So we are going to find the money to do this. Okay, that's what we're committed. That's, as elected officials, that's how we move forward with CR8s. We put together the schedule to get it done. The advisory committee can truly help us put together the list of how we get it done, if that makes sense. We need to literally check out our street lighting down in the geographic area. Where do we have good lighting? Where do we have poor lighting? Where do we need to improve? Do we need new lights? These are, when we talk about infrastructure improvements or new infrastructure, we have to start somewhere. And so I think this is a great way. I would imagine a lot of this is in the plan. So let's formally review the plan, make sure we're on track, make sure we haven't left anything, and then in order to execute, we need to get on the ground level for sidewalks. We need to get on the ground level for streets. We need to get on the ground level for street lights. And then again, I am proposing we go lot by lot, block by block, to identify those structures that need to be on historic registry with historic value, what structures need help, either through facade improvements or foundation work, and determine if there are abandoned structures that are beyond repair, how do we move forward with the acquisition in either making pocket parks or creating new workforce housing with a new product with community partners. It needs to take into consideration the old Sale High School and the park behind. I think Lincoln, the first Lincoln High School is doing pretty good. The actual physical structure and what we do with the city services are being provided. I mean, we might be able to create new, higher and better programming that's going in, but I think when we talk about, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we talk about that property, we're really talking about, again, Sale, the old Sale High School, correct?
I don't know about the old Sale. I'm talking about Lincoln High School, the old Lincoln High School.
Okay.
But that's city-owned property.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We're on the same track.
Whoa.
Hold on, Jim. So-
We'll give you all an opportunity.
So
If
anyway-
you want to address this, we'll give you an opportunity.
I
to-
think
Okay.
we've got a good roadmap. We just need to double check to make sure it's the appropriate roadmap.
Yeah.
We need to put together a plan of action. We need to execute. And to execute, it's not going to be just the 5 of us and staff. We need the advisory committee, and we
Right.
need the neighborhood to come together to truly identify. We can do this, absolutely. And I think that you have a strong willingness on the CRA board to be able to move forward as well.
We will definitely do our part.
Yeah, and I can tell you, a lot of this work has been done. There was, I'm blocking on his name, he's right there. Don't let him get away. Bill, I'm sorry, I was blocking on your name, Bill. Bill had actually proposed that some time ago, the block by block in the Frenchtown area. So that has been part of the discussion. Devin has been working with a group on the placemaking plan. We need to know where that is. Again, we just need to know where all of this is and now establish a timeline for moving forward, because a lot of what's been talked about has been done. That work has already been done. We just need a timeline. We need to know where everybody is with what they're doing. The Bethel Development Partners, the placemaking plan, what's being proposed for the block by block, and then develop a timeline for how we move all of this forward with funding, because funding is going to be an important part of that. Bill, would you address that?
Yeah, there is a Frenchtown placemaking plan which you all have approved, and it sets out priorities for what needs to be done. In working with Devin, there is a list of projects that are in process, the historic marker to go with the standard,
Right.
new crosswalks on Macomb, the intersection Macomb and Brevard. There's some stuff that's already in process as part of that $480,000 standard sale piece. The piece that we have been working on, and we've been working with the placemaking committee back to revisit what we proposed about a year and a half ago with the Frenchtown Neighborhood Association and with the bond community to do a block in each neighborhood, because what we know from the national work is that to really make an impact in a neighborhood, you need to make a visible difference in a block and show people what's possible. So what we had suggested was using Dent between Old Bainbridge and Dewey as the place to start, because you got the community garden as an anchor. We would update that to say we ought to do Dunn, Dent, and Dewey, come around that horseshoe with the thing at the end. We've gone through there on a parcel by parcel basis.
Good.
We've analyzed the pieces. We've looked at the ownership. What's rental, what's ownership, what's local ownership, what's out-of-town ownership. What does it need? Does it just need facade? Does it just need landscaping? Does it need both? Does it need rehab? Does it need demolition? Is it a vacant lot?
Where is that list, Bill?
We've got it at the office. Jim and I have went through and done that.
Hold on, Jim.
We've done that with a data sheet on each parcel.
Could you share that with us?
Yeah,
Great.
absolutely. And then what we were proposing was that the neighborhood association would take the lead in pulling the neighbors together
Right.
and saying, what do we want to do on this block? Do we want sidewalks or not? And if we do, how do we get access to the land to put them in? We would work then with the city to put a master infrastructure budget together to come back to you. So what is it you're going to fund? Is it street improvements? Is it drainage? Is it street lighting? Is it sidewalks or whatever? Then we take the affordable housing money. We buy what we can buy with vacant land, what needs to be rehabbed. We take some of your rehab project money and target it for that area. And we take and do a landscaping and facade improvement program and go in there and clean up those 3 blocks and make a real visible difference.
Now-
We don't think that's inconsistent with what's coming with the Frenchtown plan,
Right.
because it includes things like, what are we going to redo Brevard Street as a commercial corridor?
Correct.
That's going to take time. And working through the plan for that, we shouldn't have to wait on doing something effectively housing on the Ds while we wait to figure out what we're going to do on Brevard. And we've been ready to do this for a year and a half, and we're ready to go, have been, and we can crank up and start tomorrow if you're willing to do it.
And that's why I wanted you all to hear that, because I knew that a lot of this work had been done and was being done. And it wasn't something where we had to start over. It's just a matter of us. And I think what you're hearing from this board is that we're ready to get started. We want to see some things happen. We want to see some dirt turned and the community be.
And this went through the CAA, the Community Advisory Committee over a year ago with unanimous approval to move forward with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Commissioner Williams Cox?
Just hadn't gotten to you yet.
Okay.
I promised to be quiet, but I can't. We've heard what Bill had to say, and I know Mr. Bellamy is trying to say something.
Well, I don't want people shouting from the audience.
I understand, but I want to offer him, if it's okay with you, the opportunity to come to the mic so he doesn't have to shout, because it sounds like what we need, this is my new favorite word because this is where we get clarity. Sounds like we need a workshop where the CRA district is reporting to us or sharing with us, this new board, what has been done so we can get going.
Right. I mentioned that. Mr. Bellamy?
Good morning.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Richardson, I wasn't trying to shout. I had written down everything that Bill was talking about because we've been working on this, like you say, for about a year and a half.
Right.
We have already information, and we've done an analysis of the area that he's talking about. We have the ownership of the properties for each individual property. Okay. We know what the taxes have been paid, whether they've been paid or not. We also look at the condition of the property. We got a schematic that has colors in terms of what needs to be done on each property. We submitted this a year and a half ago. Okay? Nothing has happened with it. I mean, I'm glad to hear this. I mean, because it's not something that we could do in a vacuum. It's something that we all need to come together and do. And I like the idea, Mr. Mayor, about us coming together as a group to address these things. Y'all talking about the street, Dent Street over there? Dent Street ain't even a straight street. It goes like this and then goes back like that. I mean, I don't know who did the engineering of it, but it's like two streets. One, it goes like this, and then it goes over this way, and then go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even a straight street. I mean, we might even look at alternative things of doing over there. For an example, make it a one-way street. Now, that's your police chief. He suggested that. He said if you make it a one-way street, it'll do a couple of things. One is nobody, if they're selling drugs over there, he ain't going around the corner and come back. He ain't going around the corner and come back.
Yeah.
So if you make it a one-way street, they're gone. So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we need to look at. In terms of planning, I know that folks are saying that we aren't together over there and all that kind of stuff. We have gone, and when I say we, I'm talking about people from the working group, me, Kenny, Bill, all of us have been going to the meetings that Urban League has had. We've been trying to get them to, let's sit down together and deal with this stuff. But I mean, like you say, Curtis, we got time now. We need to move forward. We ain't got time to keep discussing stuff. We've been discussing stuff. We've been discussing stuff for years over here in Frenchtown.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, one of the problems, y'all talk about people and the quorums and stuff like that. See, people in Frenchtown have had so many disappointments. Okay? So you got a lot of people now say, oh, yeah, they ain't gonna do nothing. And that's the attitude we have to deal with. And I mean, you know, it's time we did something. I don't want to cry here, but
We don't.
anyway, it's time we did something over there. But I think that really it's going to take us coming together. Because, see, there's no need of one group over here starting something and somebody over here going another direction. We need to all come together, make a decision on what's going to happen, bring the resources together that needs to be brought together. That's what happened in Bond. They brought all the resources in that needed to happen. We haven't done that yet. Right. We need to bring all of the resources in that makes an impact on the community and work together and give the community more responsibility.
Right.
Okay?
Thank you.
Let them take responsibility for it. Don't do it for them. Let them do it for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. So, Mr. Interim Executive Director, where are we?
All right, so I hear a couple of things, and Mr. Bellamy, I think, hit it right on the head.
Yeah, he did.
Is that you have all these different groups asking for something different. We've had, in the bond neighborhood plan, we forced everybody to come together with one plan with a series of recommendations, specific recommendations. You did the same thing with the Frenchtown redevelopment, Central Place plan. Devon's going to be bringing us part of your budget this upcoming year as part of your fiscal 2020 budget, a whole list of projects to be funded this next coming year. Okay. So that's the specifics in the neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. When you look at the redevelopment plan, I think what everybody's crying out for is specific action items to move forward with. Right. What we are going to be doing, and I was going to announce this under item 5.03, we are taking the redevelopment plan out to the community. The dates are June 3rd at the Smith-Williams Center and June 4th at the Lincoln Center. And what we're going to do is we're going to present what we have heard from the community up to this point as to what they feel needs to be in the redevelopment plan. I'm also going to force the fact that we need prioritization. Yeah. Are the sidewalks on Dent over and done more important than some other action items in the community? That's right. We need to force that reaction from the community and bring back something to you that everyone agrees to. These are our top priorities in the community. Yeah. So we can then, in your budget item, which is your last item, focus on what are we going to put our money for in moving forward. Right. So that's the approach I want to take. That's the approach that's coming up. And fund bond, fund Frenchtown, the redevelopment plan, and then fund the priorities in the redevelopment plan as it's updated to you coming up.
Okay. Let's do it.
Any other
Let's do it.
questions or comments? I think we're at the place where we can get this started. Like I said, I think what you're hearing from this board is that we want to see, and from the citizens, enough, the plans are in place, we need to begin to move forward and see some things happen. I think that's what we're hearing from this morning. Okay, so with that, thank you, Eric, again, for the work that you do and for your presentation this morning. And again, let us know what we need to do to get you the support that you need on that CAC so that when you come, you're coming speaking on behalf of a majority, at least, of the members of the committee. But thank you for the work that you do. Okay, that brings us to item number 4, public comments on agenda items. Are there any speakers on agenda items?
Thank you, CRA Board Chairman. We do allow citizens to have 3 different opportunities to speak, and our speaker card does have the ability for the speaker to specifically state where they're wanting to speak. I do have 7 speaker cards where the speakers have indicated 10 options or opportunities to speak. The different opportunities are at the beginning of the meeting agenda, during the discussion of the agenda item, or non-agenda item. So right now, I do have 3 speakers that are wanting to speak as they've marked the speaker card at the beginning of the meeting, and those speakers would include Dr. Hollyfield on agenda item number 5.02, Dr. C at the beginning of the meeting she has listed number 4, and Mr. Stanley Sims. So I would like to, consistent with the agenda and how we have it outlined, ask those 3 speakers to come to the podium separately. Dr. Hollyfield, if you would come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. There is going to be a little light that as you get to expending your time will go from green to yellow to red. Thank you very much. I have Dr. Hollyfield, followed by Dr. C, then Mr. Stanley Sims.
Okay. And if there are any other speakers who would like to address the board on agenda items, there are speaker forms that you can complete and get to the dais. Dr. Hollyfield.
Dr. Hollyfield, I think I should be allowed to speak at least as long as
3 minutes, Dr. Hollyfield.
As long as Mr. Wilson. But in any event, the CRA is just, it doesn't have a soul. It's like a moral desert. It needs to just disappear. It needs to go. It has actually increased income inequality because you've given a bunch of money to people that don't even need it. And if Dunk Street, if there's no sidewalk in a community, then you should at least consider not tasing 60-year-old grandmamas when they walk in the street. I can't understand that. And the reason why people don't come to these meetings, I go to just about all of the advisory committee meetings, and I'm not even on them. But I don't know, I would ask, why should we come? Again, that issue has been raised earlier. We don't get listened to. We oppose Big Ben Cares. And y'all gave them $1.5 million anyhow, and the advisory committee voted against it. The advisory committee said, basically, I don't care what y'all black people say. This thing is going to go before the board, and you gave them $1.5 million for not-for-profit, and what did they do? The first thing Big Ben Cares did when they moved into the community was started calling the police on black people, including me, including threatened to call them on Sylvia Hubbard. And then this infamous so-called development agreement. This is basically a white supremacy agreement. First right of refusal. I mean, it's not even their property. The property that is gonna be returned, supposed to be returned, you give Rob Renzi first right of refusal. Well, it ain't his, it's ours, the Frenchtown CRA. So was Rob Renzi given first right of refusal because he's white and a member of Leadership Tallahassee? Is that what's going on here? And then they're in default of the agreement. There's a non-discrimination clause in that agreement, in that Big Ben Cares agreement. They can't just call the police on people, which is what they do. There's a non-discrimination. They're in default. If somebody's black and they don't like you, they can call the police on you. And the only people they have called the police on or threatened to call the police on are black. So I would say be careful what you ask for. First thing some of these people do when they move into the black community is start calling the police on you. So I think, and then there's the sabotage of that land. Why does that land that's being returned have all those restrictions on it? That's a sabotage of our own land.
Dr.
Somebody
Highfield,
give me an explanation. What?
If you would begin to conclude your remarks, please.
Well, I'm just saying. Tell me any other parcel of land, downtown, any parcel of land in which the value was deliberately sabotaged by a whole bunch of restrictions. And is there any evidence that they dealt with a contamination on that land?
Dr. Highfield, would you
That's also in the
begin to conclude your remarks, please?
development agreement. So I'm just saying, we have some serious problems, and we need to be careful what we ask for, because oftentimes, instead of benefiting the community, what we get is the exact opposite.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Highfield. Thank you. Dr. C., if you would come to the podium, please. Good morning.
Jerry C. I have property at 648 West Brevard, and I wanted to talk for a couple of minutes about this plan that you guys keep mentioning.
Dr. C., could you bring the microphone?
Yes,
There you go.
the
Thank
plan that you keep mentioning, and I wanted to say that the original plan covers everything that you're talking about, and I think it's important for you to consider that every time we have a new group of folks in your chairs, we have to start this process all over again. I can't tell you how many times we've talked about this very same thing, because I come to a lot of this. And it's always the same. We start from the beginning each time. Now, for the first time, I'm hearing that you're ready to execute. You may need new staff for that, because unfortunately, in the 18 years that we've had this program, you can see all the things that they've gotten done with the big businesses and such, but there's very little that we can point to that's gotten done in the communities. It's quite possible that their forte is, in fact, commercial development and those kinds of things, but now it's time to get some stuff done in the community. These folks have stood up and they've told you they've done all the background work, and they're quite ready to go with sidewalks. And you wouldn't think that a sidewalk would cause this kind of an 18-year discussion. Or the streetlights. It doesn't seem possible, but then here we are. And I'm trying to get you guys to understand that it's time to do something. You know, I'm tenured at the School of Business. I was before I retired. And one thing Sybil taught us was that no excuse is acceptable. And that's how we operated. No excuse was acceptable at SBI. If you had something that had to get done, you got it done, period. But that's not happening here in the real world. And I guess I'm asking that you think about putting together a team of people who understand what it means to actually get something done. Now, that whole thing with Lincoln School, it seems to me that if there were some understanding of what the CRA was supposed to do, they would have figured out a way to get around, not get around the zoning, but take care of whatever it was that was keeping them from getting it included. We've talked to people on the staff about putting sidewalks on Brevard. You've got people on wheelchairs trying to go up and down there, people with families trying to walk with their children. You can't stand 3 people abreast, even on Brevard Street sidewalks. And we talked about that 15 years ago. I think Kenny and I went down there and talked about the sidewalks, and they told us, oh, that's a lot of work. You have to get everybody, well, isn't that your job? Maybe I'm confused. Isn't that your job? To get it done, not to say it's a lot of work. So I guess what I'm asking you guys, since you seem to be really willing to and you really seem to be genuine about wanting to get this done, you need to get a team in place who know how to do that. Sometimes you can't carry the ball. You have to pass it. The person who runs might not be able to make the touchdown, but maybe they have to pass that torch on. Because right now you've got folks who are committed to their own agenda, because there's no excuse for this stuff not to have gotten done. And the fact that we have to keep coming down here, I'm like, I've spent 10 years doing this. I'm tired. I'm going to find some other young people to come down here and sing my song. But there's no reason for this not to have gotten done, except there's some kind of an attitude. There's something else going on that has something to do with something else. And it's certainly not about trying to help the people in that community. And they're not here because they're working 2 and 3 jobs. They can't come to a meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm retired. But they're working. So the very fact that they can't get here, that it's scheduled at a time they can't come. Now, you know, Bethel and all those churches are having meetings. People come to that. Maybe the staff needs to show up to that and take some notes. Because people don't come to the organized meetings that they call for, but they do come out to the church meetings. So maybe they need to show up there and see what the people think. Because this whole thing about let's have a meeting, let's have a plan, let's redo it, da-da-da-da-da, that's all bull. I hate to put it that way, but that's all kick the can down the road stuff. And that's been going on for 20 years. And if they keep kicking the can down the road, of course the time will run out, won't it? And then they don't have to do anything. We already have seen the clock turn on this developers setting aside affordable housing because they voted to pull that out, right? The state legislature said they don't have to do that anymore, commit some of that development for affordable housing. And as far as Dunn Street is concerned, how many people on that street own that property? People who live there in those homes own that? No. So we can't keep saying they won't sign. The property owners won't sign. Well, they don't live there. Well, there's eminent domain in there. Yeah. So I guess my question is, what is it going to take to get it done? Who's it going to take to carry the ball? into the end zone. And you might have to find yourself a new team. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. C. Thank you for coming this morning. Pastor Sims, good morning.
Good morning. I'm going to try to answer Dr. C's question. Well, first off, Dr. C, we've got rid of the quarterback that couldn't throw the ball. And the second thing that we've done is I have watched Wayne Tedder since this new administration been elected by the people. He was able to give us clear direction of what his plan will be. Now, this ain't a Rattler thing, but it is a Rattler thing. Wayne went and graduated from Florida A&M University, and I also want to take this proud moment to congratulate Miss Sheila Williams, who have just got her higher academia from the Rattler School. So
Congratulations.
when I tell you that the Mafia wall is falling, the Mafia wall is falling.
Thank you.
And not only is the Mafia wall is falling, we've got a mayor who is helping everyone. His office staff is accessible. Now, I ain't telling you what Johnny told me or what she said that they said. I'm telling you what I experienced. And then not only do I tell you that things are changing now, is because you got a new city commissioner, and this is what the street committee tells me. The people that lives in your communities that have been fortunate to go to higher education, they say Miss Bryant is good, but she don't play. Have your stuff together when you get there. Now that's the word on the street. And then here's another indication to me that the Mafia wall is falling. When have you had the opportunity, Mr. Bellamy, to kind of contrast the different side to the story? Usually they just call their favorite. But this morning, what I witnessed through transparency and through public access that Mr. Jeremy Madlow, who I ran against, fought for, allowed that opportunity to be heard. That's when I think government is working for us. Now, some of my tactics are wrong, and the mayor has to pull my coattail. But that is a mayor who has accessibility to all people of life, those he agree with and they don't. And my last carrot, and I'm gonna put my last, that's 5, because I put 5 on it. You know what I'm talking about. Now we walk into City Hall like we walk into the Capitol and like we walk into the courthouse. And you right, maybe that's why we don't come up here. But the Mafia wall is falling. I'm so sorry, Mayor. I wanted to talk about my co-op project that we're trying to do down in the co-op, but we ain't be able to do that because I done spent my time.
Thank you, Pastor Sims, for being here this morning.
Thank you, Wayne.
God bless you. Any other speakers?
Those are all of the
Williams.
speakers that I have listed for at the beginning of the meeting on an agenda item.
All right, thank you so much. Board members, that brings us to item 5, the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to?
Move consent.
There's a motion by Mayor Daley, seconded by Commissioner Matlow to accept the consent agenda. Are there any questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. That brings us to item number 7, the Greater Frenchtown Southside District Policy Formation and Direction. Mr. Interim Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just a quick introduction. So what we're trying to do is very similar to what the city has done just yesterday, provide an update on where we are with the current budget, and then look forward and give you an indication of what we foresee as being items that we're going to have to fund in this upcoming year. Some of it is undetermined at this point, but by the time we come back to you in, I believe, July, we will have some formal requests mentioning what we said for Frenchtown. We'll have some specific requests for funding in Frenchtown. We have a summary table for both the downtown district and the Greater Frenchtown Southside District to kind of show you here's what our anticipated revenues are, here's where our anticipated expenditures are to date, and then here's the dollars that we have available for future programming. I think after we get some feedback from our community meetings on June 3rd and June 4th, I think that'll give us a little bit more understanding of what the community wants as a whole as a priority, and we can bring that back to you in an update. We also have Rick here who can go over the information to you in a little bit more detail.
Okay. Mr. McGraw? Good morning.
Good morning. So I have a series of slides here, but I'm not going to spend it's actually every slide that's in your agenda item. I have a table, it's in the presentation. I'm not going to go over each and every one of those unless there's a question about those, but I did want to concentrate on a few key areas as we look at this, because we're also looking at, while this is the 2020 budget direction, we're also looking for a little bit of guidance in the 2019 budget, because we do have an adopted budget, but we are also receiving requests up to this time, and we expect more requests by the end of the fiscal year, and we're going to have a little, as Wayne talked about, we're going to end up with expenditures probably exceeding the tax increment we're going to generate in any year. So we're going to require us to look into our reserve funds. We want to make sure you're comfortable with that as we move forward. Am I doing this right?
Is it turned on?
Oh, something went, so, okay. So again, what we're looking at is Frenchtown, Greater Frenchtown Southside budget and the downtown district budget. We do see a lot of activity going on in Frenchtown Southside, and we'll talk about that when we get into that slide. Downtown district is a little bit more stable, not a lot of activity in there this year, and we can get into some of the more specifics for you as we go forward. Okay, are you doing it by hand? Okay, so I'll just look over at you then. Okay. Just some general points for the Frenchtown Southside budget. This is the second year that we've been at a thing called TIF parity with the county. So before, the county used to contribute 8.3 mills to the Frenchtown Southside District, and the city put in 4.1 mills. Starting in 2019, this year, the county's mill contribution is the same as the city. So we went, basically the county's giving us $2 for every dollar the city put in. We're now almost to a dollar for dollar contribution. So it has a short-term impact on us, but they also extend the life of the CRA to 2038, which will give us more time and gives us more money over that extended period of time. Like you heard yesterday from the city, we're assuming a millage rate of 4.1 mills. A big thing that happened in December of last year, this fiscal year 2019, was a commitment by the CRA board to implement the Bond Neighborhood First Plan with a total cost of $6.4 million. You put $500,000 into the budget for 4 key elements of that plan, and they're being implemented right now with Parks and Recreation and public infrastructure. That dealt with a linear park, improvements to Spencer Steed Stevens Park, and some $150,000 for a commercial or a residential facade improvement program and the like. So we're moving ahead with that program as well. We anticipate, as we talked about earlier, other investments for Greater Frenchtown neighborhood that'll come from the implementation, from the placemaking plan that's now become an implementation plan that Devin and his team with Jim and a few others are leading that effort. That's going to go in our 2020 budget. We don't have a number for it yet, but it will be in the 2020 budget. And then we expect the budget and all to continue to evolve as we go through this process, coming back to you in July with a preliminary budget, and then coming back in in September with the final budget. This shows our table. This is our revenues for the Frenchtown Southside District. 2019 is the actual revenues we have right now at $9.5 million. That includes almost $2 million in reserves and about $1.1 million in uncommitted prior year funds, the two lines from the bottom. And the Frenchtown and the 2020 plan includes $8 million in revenues, which includes about $5.6 million in reserves, which is a rollover from the funds from 2019. That 2019 number, when it rolls over, includes $4.2 million that the CRA received from the sale of the Firestone and Bloxham property. Those funds were put into the Frenchtown Southside districts. That's why you see such a big increase in the reserves from one year to the next. The 2019 includes the $4.2 million. We're projecting no 2020 prior year funds because we're going to use all the funds as we go through the budget for funding particular projects that are being recommended in both the 2020 budget and the 2019 budget and the 2020 budget. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the administrative expenses. We're still working our way through this. The only thing in here is we're projecting generally right now a 3% increase in operating and personnel expenses. And the point for this is that any salary increase that's proposed by the CRA, by the city, is the same salary increase the CRA would use in their budget projections. But just to give you a sense of what we're looking at, about $440,000 in budget and operating expenses for Frenchtown Southside, and about another $446,000 for the downtown district. And we'll talk about that one briefly, but it's like I said, we're still working this one as we go forward. And again, if you have any questions while I'm going through, please let me know. So there are some projects that we have to pay. We have some contractual expenses that we've entered into with developers. The block and deck on Gain Street is one of those. We'll pay them approximately $420,000 in fiscal year 20. And we'll have one last payment to make to them in fiscal year 2021. We estimate that payment for 2021 to be $185,000. So that basically means in that point, once we get past 2021, those revenues then we're paying back to block and deck will come back to the CRA for investment within the district.
Can I go back one slide for a minute? Is the CRA staff, the personnel associated with that self-sustaining, is that one of our self-sustaining funds such that it's not a part of the general revenue for the city?
Correct. We're paid out of the tax increment that's generated
Okay.
by the project. Yes, ma'am. Okay. So at the April 8th City workshop, the board asked us to look at some of they wanted more information on anticipated projects and projects under consideration. So Table 4, which we're going to go over through here briefly, and also Attachment 2 into your agenda item includes a lot of that additional information. You're going to see as we go through this a lot of TPDs, meaning to be determined, because we know that the request coming is anticipated, but we just don't have a number to apply to that yet. And this is where we get into, this is both for 19's budget and 2020's proposed budget, and this is where we're talking about potentially getting into a point where we're going to have to use some reserve funds to make these projects happen. As we point out here, we anticipate, based on what we know right now, a deficit of about $593,000 in 2019, which would be covered by reserves, and $1.5 million that would be in 2020 that would also be covered by reserves. Now that 1.5 includes, because we're going to put about $2 million, we're proposing about $2 million in the 2020 budget for the second phase of the Bond Neighborhood First Plan.
Question on
Commissioner Bryant.
I'm on Table 4.
Yes, ma'am.
We have TBDs on the current year.
Yes.
We're in 2019 now.
Yes.
I understand TBD for projections for next year, but explain this year for me.
So those are projects that have come to us and indicated a desire for funding, but they haven't given us any indication of how much they're going to ask for. These are
this year?
For this year, yes. So we could still be something we bring back to the board for approval. It's just that they've talked to us about that. Frenchtown placemaking, that's Devin's group that's coming on. We'll see that we have some money in the out years, Well, let me step back up to the first one, if I may, then on Table 4, where the TBDs are.
Right.
So you see in there that we have $200,000 for the Bond Neighborhood Plan. That's in addition to the $500,000 in 2019. That's in addition to the $500,000 that was proposed by this board back in December. That's based upon discussions I've had with Public infrastructure, it says Greater Bond Neighborhood First long-term projects. That's a $200,000 was recommended by public infrastructure so they can move on to some of the more advanced phases of the project, and then $2 million in 2020, which will help with some of the streetscape improvements that are outlined in that plan. There's 6 streets that meet the streetscape improvements, and this is UUPI STAR, public infrastructure part, start to how they could implement those streetscape improvements. I don't have the details of what that'll include yet, but that's what we're working on. We can have more details as the budget goes forward, but that's the big one. That's why we actually see a deficit coming forward to us in the 2020 budget.
So if we're projecting a deficit, these additional projects, especially for 2019, the placemaking implementation, the South City Affordable, all of those TBDs,
Yeah.
what is the probability that they would, regardless of what they asked for, that they would be funded?
Could we back up one more slide? So there's a couple of things that are happening in the 2019 budget. So we have, for example, the Delta Kappa Omega Providence Neighborhood Community Center has come to the CRA and was requested and has been received $7,400 to do some site assessments on their neighborhood center over in Providence. That might reveal they're having some settling issues. The building is settling. When we get the result of that study back, it could be that they approach us for funds to address that settling problem. That could either be funded in 2019 if they need to make emergency repairs quickly, or it could be funded in 2020. So in the next table down, we show that as a TBD because we just don't know what it's going to be, but we do believe they will be coming back to us prior to the end of 2019 with a request for funding. Does that hopefully help answer some of your question? Yeah. So these TBDs may end up being 0 for 2019, or they may actually end up having a number. When we come back to you in July, I hope that we're able to complete these a little bit better. Okay. So we talked about the shortfall. So again, the 2019 budget is still evolving. We're working to kind of address that. The 2020 budget has a lot of TPDs in there as well because we're working with Devin and a few others to actually get a real number. We see $2 million for bond. I don't know if Devin's going to give me a number that's $1 million or $1.5 million. He's working, or their team is working, to come up with a set of numbers that we can put in for the 2020 budget. And I think this is where we're getting back to one of the questions of what is happening with the CRA Community Redevelopment Plan. The redevelopment plan is very broad by nature so that you can fund a lot of things with the plan. What we're using is these neighborhood plans to help implement the redevelopment plan. So redevelopment plan allows for affordable housing. Redevelopment plan allows for infrastructure improvement. A redevelopment plan allows for a lot of different approaches. Now we have specific projects in the bond plan that identifies some $6.4 million of funding that the CRA has made a long-term commitment to take care of. We expect the same thing for the Frenchtown plan when they move from the placemaking plan to the working group implementation plan. And I expect it'll include some of the things we just heard about earlier today with the facade improvements, the streetscape improvements, and sidewalks and the like. So I guess I want to give you guys a sort of sense of confidence that we understand what you're saying. We've heard it, and we've heard it from the neighborhoods as well. And our plan is going forward with a plan that the neighborhoods have identified and have prioritized, and we're implementing what they've told us they would like to see happen.
Rick,
Yes, ma'am.
with basically 3 months remaining in 2019, even if we just had a estimate included in here, because to be determined is not going to calculate to let us know where we are. Is there something, and you mentioned Devin a couple of times, I mean, there has to be some idea of what something might cost, at least a floor and a ceiling, just so we know what we're working with, because if we're 3 months away from the end of this budget cycle for 2019, yeah, because I'm not counting June. Let's say June is already gone. So we got July, August, and September. And if we've gone basically 9 months with no numbers, again, what's the likelihood that we're going to get some numbers in 3 months?
I think for some of these, so I would suspect that for the Providence Community Center, I think there's a strong likelihood we'll get a number from them. I think they're doing the testing next week. They're doing the testing of the site next week, so we'll know what the settlement issues are, if it's a minor problem or major problem. So I think in that one, I'm fairly confident we'll get a number. The Frenchtown Redevelopment Partners, we're actually going to meet with them next Tuesday and get some sense of what they're going to present. One of the issues they have is they have to go out, still have to go out to the community and get community buy-in on their project, community comments on their project. So whether or not they probably won't make it probably won't be a 2019 budget issue. It's probably more a 2020 budget issue for the partners. But I do think we'll have a sense shortly here of what the general ask is going to be.
But for placemaking, that has been, as we've heard this morning, it's been there for a minute. But we still have no numbers. But we're saying we're ready. We need to go do something.
Right.
But we don't know how much we have allocated to do something with because we don't know what the ask is.
Devin's going to come up and address that.
Good morning. How you guys all doing?
Good morning,
Devin.
So one thing just that I want to put out on the table is placemaking. One of the things a little bit different about this is that we had a sell of property that put $500,000 into the community that we've been working with that $500,000 we currently have. So the projects, we have about 9 projects underway right now. I think Bill hit on them pretty well, talking about crosswalks, those things. And then we also had $300,000 that the CRA had approved 2 years ago. And we've been working with that funding right now. So some of that funding for the projects that we have underway. Next step would be we still have to get a list of projects of what are going to be the next projects, the bigger projects, the ones that are actually going to have these larger price tags attached to them. And that may come in 2020 rather than between now and 2019. But that's where I've been asked by this group and everyone else to try to help get this community to start coming together.
Yes.
I know Kenny Barber's been working very heavily on this. Jim, other members of the working group are starting to meet with Urban League and those other groups. And now everybody's talking about what are the projects that we need as a community and how do we team up on these projects. So until we know what those projects are, it's really hard for us to start giving you a number on that. Now, if I was going to ask you today, I'd say let's get what Bond has. So that would be what they asked me today. But I know we need to be more realistic and try to figure out what it is that we need to do for the project.
Thank you, Devin, and I appreciate the energy and the effort that's going into that. But in budgeting, we do something that we call forecasting. That we may not hit it, but it's a forecast. It's an estimate so that we can compute. And so I'm just saying that in this case, we can't not compute. Even if you put in there, I need $5, at least we will know that somewhere down the line, $5 may or may not be needed. There may need to be more. There may need to be less. But a plug-in, a reasonable plug-in to help us kind of calculate. And if you said you want what Bond has, even if you look at the Bond plan and you have something comparable, then you have some numbers or some estimates that can be plugged in. I just chose placemaking, but there are others. I'm just not understanding that 3 months before the end of the fiscal year, we still have TBDs in our budget. So if we don't have something in the 2019 budget, I don't want to see us go over into, by the time we get to 2020, we still have to be determined, is what I'm saying. Because again, that does not compute. We need something that will compute so we can look at overall how much money are we talking about.
And I think the realistic for us would be the 2020 budget to have you guys some numbers for 2020 specifically. And we can start looking at that now and looking at the bond and what those other kind of factors are, working with public infrastructure just to see what pricing they've already allocated that. We can get you some type of number for it.
So maybe our assumption, and be careful when you assume, maybe our assumption for 2019 for those TPDs should be 0, because that's what the ask is being. And then look at in 2020, being able to come up with some better numbers. Because I don't know how you put letters in a spreadsheet and get numbers at the end. And so that, I'm just trying to figure it out. Maybe we just need to plug in 0 for now, or whatever the ask has been, with the anticipation that in 2020, you will get a number.
Sure, or we can actually even go into 2020, you can amend the budget as we go through the fiscal year itself. I mean, nothing stops you from...
Those monies will roll over. They will roll over into the 2020 budget, those that aren't expended in 2019.
They could still be committed, right? But they would not necessarily, if they weren't expended. The only thing that's probably likely to roll over in 2019, because even with the numbers here, even with the TPDs for 2019, we still have a deficit of about $593,000. And that'll be covered by reserves. Now, we might be able to get some of that back with if all of our operating expenses are not used up by the end of the year, because then we roll that into prior year funds. So
But I think what you're hearing is that by the July meeting,
we'll have a number there for you.
okay,
It's either going to be gone or there'll be a number there.
Thank you.
right. That's
And
what you're
2020
hearing.
as well.
Yes,
Yes.
okay.
Okay, I think we're coming around the circle, because if we're already projecting a deficit and moving money from reserves, why would we put anything other than zero in the TBDs for 2019?
Can I clarify? So
Please.
when Rick is talking about deficits, he's talking in general regarding the TIF increment that has been created by the project. So we receive a certain amount of TIF increment each year. What we've done over time is we have other funding sources, parking revenues. We have the sale of the property at Cascades for $4.25 million. That was put in the pot of money for us to do in reserves. So you need to consider that as money that is available to be spent.
Okay.
It's not a deficit that we're creating. We're just not able to pay for all this project out of the TIF. We're going into our reserves by doing smart investments over time and creating opportunities to fund additional projects.
And those reserves, Commissioner, are non-recurring funds. They were one-time sale of property put into the reserves that we could access if we went over the amount that the TIF generates.
Yeah, most reserves are not non-recurring, but yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeremy.
Commissioner Matlow?
I've been having my finger up over here. What I've been saying, man. First of all, thank you for the presentation, and Wayne, I think this is the most clear financial picture I've seen since I've been here, and that's something I've been asking for, so I appreciate just how precise and easy to understand it was all kind of laid out today, so thank you. Also, thank you on the talked about earlier about how we need to go out to Frenchtown and have them prioritize projects and, essentially vote. And back to the conversation we had yesterday, that's kind of what I was talking about with participatory budgeting, put things in front of people, let them kind of rank them so we know what's important to fund. As far as future budgeting, I just had one question. To get as much money as Bond has or what those projects may be in Frenchtown. And Blueprint, we've done a lot of advanced funding with either bonding or borrowing money from the city of Tallahassee to kind of expedite those projects. Is that a possibility for the CRA if we wanted to go in and make real transformational change, how we could set a plan in place and get the ball rolling on that?
That's absolutely a possibility. Let's say in Frenchtown, a project emerges as a big priority. Well, we don't have the funding available now, but we have over 5 years of tax increment that will come in that could pay back a loan to do that. We will look at that. So whatever your priorities that you give us, it's our job to figure out how to make it happen.
Okay, thank you.
I had an additional question. Where's Devin?
Commissioner Williams-Cox?
Okay.
Devin, if you'd come up.
Devin, you say you're operating out of a pot of money that you have from some other resources that are not reflected here in the budget. Where can we see that? How you're spending, what you have, what you're planning to do with it and that kind of thing? Where can we find that?
I have a list of projects right now that the working group has come up with. I have a spreadsheet of those. I'd be happy to send that spreadsheet out of those projects and just kind of what we've allocated, where the funding's coming so far for those. But they're not CRA funds for the majority of those projects, other than some crosswalks that we'll be working on. That would be some CRA funding that he does have reflected within this budget.
I would be interested in seeing it because for me, I'm hearing, this part of money is going to do this and this part of money is going to do that. And we want to make sure that we're not crossing unless we need to funding sources if there's not enough to do whatever. But I'd like to see what's happening because I heard right up front there are a lot of things going on. I'm hearing from the audience there are not a lot of things going on. So I need to know what's going on so that I can be able to speak intelligently about what is going on and how it's going on. So if you could share that information, I'm sure the rest of us wouldn't mind having more information, being armed with more information. So that's awesome news that some things are happening, that they're happening out of another pot of money.
Yeah, Commissioner, there was, what was the total, Devin, that we got for the property that we sold to the standard that was put into not the CRA, but the funding for
Close to 500,000.
Frenchtown, yeah.
It's
for
about
Frenchtown Plaza.
485,000. It's
Yeah,
about 435
that was
to
it.
sell the property and an additional 50,000 for a plaza piece that would be going in at the Standard across the street from Renaissance. And that is one of the projects that's underway. We're planning to have that installed in August. That's the timeframe right now. We're working with Steve Schaefer's group on getting the construction designs and the builds for that. That's $50,000 that's being spent on something. We're working with some community members on getting that installed and other things that kind of follow along with some of that funding.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Rick?
And I just point out, we do have $150,000 already in the Frenchtown, we call it the Gateway Project, so that's what Devin's talking about, and we are doing some improvements in Frenchtown with that $150,000 right now. The next table is just kind of summary of where we are. I think Wayne talked about this at the very beginning. It shows what the budgets are for both years. That's the top line, and then it shows the various costs. And as Wayne points out, if you come down to the bottom line, we have about $5.6 million in reserves, or at this point it's going to be reserves, but and $4 million that are available for reinvestment by the CRA. It's not accumulative, so if you lose the $5 million, then you don't have $4 million the next year, but it does reflect individually. And that $5 million, the difference between the 5 and the 4, reflects the $1 million we're going to have to commit for some additional funding for the 2020 budget as is currently proposed.
Okay.
The downtown district, a little bit easier, a little bit more stable. The downtown district, again, in 2018, April of 2018, the board changed the structure of the CRA quite a bit. I should say the city, the county, and the board changed the structure of the CRA. And the county will continue to make tax increment contributions to the CRA for the downtown district into 2023. Starting in 2024, they will not make any more tax increment payments to the downtown district. What they will do is they will make their tax increment related payments for the 3 projects that have been approved for development. The Washington Square, which is under construction behind the courthouse, Cascades joint venture, which we all know about down on Cascades Park, and then 440 North, which is going to go on the location of the old Envision Credit Union site. That's all they'll pay for after 2024 is those individual, what their TIF contribution would have been in a normal year for those projects. The 2020 budget we'll talk about here includes a $3.5 million payment that's going to go towards the public garage that the CRA will own. It'll probably be operated by the city, but it's going to be owned by the CRA, and we have to make a 50% payment probably in April of May of 2020, and that's about $3.5 million. Somewhere towards the end of the year, it could be September of 2020, or it could be October of 2020, which moves us into a different fiscal year. We're going to have to pay this remaining $3.5 million. And we go through the agenda item, that will be done through a loan. Whether or not we have to borrow the full $3.5 million for the second payment remains to be seen, but we're anticipating a loan will be acquired using the capacity of the city, because the CRA has no history of borrowing from private lenders at that amount. So we'll be using the capacity of the city. We've already been in discussions with budget and the treasurer clerk about this borrowing. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get in there. The next one, again, is for the downtown district. We're looking at about $2.3 million in TIF for 2019. It's broken out there to show you what the city and county payments are going to be. And then, like Wayne talked about, we do have a few other funds. We get about $112,000, $111,000 a year in parking fees. We own the parking lot next to the Aloft Hotel, and we lease that to the hotel for their guests. And then we have about $2 million in reserve funds that will be available from 2019 that will roll into 2020. So when you see the $2.015 million in 2019, that reflects the addition of some of the 2019 dollars we don't expect to spend by the end of the year.
So
Again,
if I may interrupt. So I just want to be clear. We have the funds for the parking garage that is associated with Aloft. Was it Aloft?
I'm sorry, so for the Cascades joint venture project on on Cascades Park. We're going to be owner of a 250 plus or minus parking space garage. It'll be owned by the CRA. It'll be a public parking garage that will generate revenue by people paying to park there. So we're buying that. It's about a $7 million expense. So in April or May, we'll pay at 50% construction. The agreement is we'll pay half that.
Right, not that. I thought you said something about a loft.
We own the
I'm sorry,
parking
the
lot.
Aloft Hotel.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, so there's a parking lot next to the Aloft Hotel.
Right.
The CRA owns that parking lot. And we lease that to the Aloft Hotel for their guests, for their overflow guests. And we earn about $111,000 a year for that. And it goes up 5% every 3 years. Does that answer your question?
yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Sorry. So our total reserves, our total cash on hand and for 2020, we're looking at $5.6 million and about $4.5 million in 2019. 2019 budget is pretty solid for the downtown district. If you go on to the next one. Again, for the operating expenses, again, we're projecting 3%. We'll come back with more information on that. And one of the things we'll get by the time we come back to you in July is yesterday at the budget presentation, you guys asked about the ISF funds, if I got that right? The ISF funds, so we do get charged for HR services, we do get charged for TI services, we do get charged for accounting services, and a few others. Our accounting services are probably going to go up this year. Our fees are probably going to go up this year because the legislature changed some rules for the CRA, including a more extensive audit requirement, and so we'll have to build that into the charges for accounting. But they vary, and they get charged. That's very specific because it depends on what we do in each district. That's how budget determines what we're going to get charged within each line item in there. So we'll have that for you in the July meeting. It's just not available at this point in time. Next, good. So these are our must-make commitments. The College Town, now that ended in 2019. The only reason I'm showing you that on there, we made that done for Frenchtown, for downtown. That's $366,000 in payments we've made in the downtown district. We're not going to have to make any more. So that's money that will be available for commitment within the downtown district. The Gateway project, this is the last part of it, but it'll go through 2028. It's relatively small, in the $55,000 to $57,000 to $58,000 a year. Onyx, or 444 College Avenue, it's a student housing complex. We're making a payment to them in 2020. It's projected to be $265,000. And I think we estimate that 2021 will make a $268,000 payment. In 2022, we'll make a $25,000 payment, and then we'll be done with that project. The debt service so you see $3.5 million payment for the garage. That'll be paid out of CRA funds. I do not think that that's going to cause us to have to go too much into debt, or go into our reserves, have to use some of our reserve funds. But that will be a single payment, and then remaining $3.5 million we'll borrow through the city. We're looking at a payment of about $337,000 a year for debt service. We expect the parking revenues, hopefully, to be about $305,000 in the first full year of operation. The challenge for us is going to be is that when we borrow that, the lenders are probably going to ask us to commit TIF to the debt service as opposed to, say, committing the revenues from the parking. They want to make sure that the tax money we get, that's a known commodity, they're going to want to make sure they get first cut at that. Could you go back one? Sorry. So this, again, just summarizes kind of where we are with some of our capital commitments. The big thing on this is that we will have to dig into reserves at about $160,000, $161,000 because of the garage payment and a few other payments that we have to make in our downtown district. I don't see that as being a problem. We have good numbers in the reserves, and we're going to be watching the reserves to make sure we keep a balance in there that's available for both Frenchtown, Southside, and downtown if we need to cover an unanticipated expense in any one of our other projects. Again, this kind of just falls up onto Table 9. We're going to talk about some of our proposed expenses here, and what you'll hear from Sheila here shortly will be some money for downtown events, both small and large events that we're proposing to put in our 2020 budget, $135,000. That's the only item we have right now in our 2020 proposed budget that's not a contractual commitment. That could change a little bit by the time we come back to you in July, but I don't see a whole lot of activity in there, and mostly, if we have any money left over in 2020 that we can use towards it, we would probably put towards reducing the amount, or 2021 even, reducing the amount of funds we have to borrow for the second garage payment. And then the last table just kind of takes you through the same one as the other one. Just shows you what the funds were at the end of the year, projected full budget, and then, whoops, yep, could you go on to the next slide? I'm sorry. There we go. All the funds for 2019 and 2020, that includes reserves, it includes TIF, it includes prior year funds. That's the whole number there, the various expenses that we go through, and then what's available at the end of the year. And you'll see we go from funds available for future programming, from the down in 2019 to from $3.2 million to $1.1 million, and that's reflective of the payments we're going to have to make for the parking garage at 50%. And then what happens next, there's a couple different things on here. We will get, the estimates we're doing right now are staff estimates. Our estimates usually come in pretty good, but we'll get a tax roll estimate from the Leon County Property Appraiser in June. We'll get a preliminary estimate from Leon County Property Appraiser in July. The CAC, the Citizens Advisory Committee, will review the budget on July 12th. The DRC, the Downtown Redevelopment Commission will review the budget on July 2nd, or excuse me, CAC on August 12th, DRC on July 2nd. We take it back to you. We do have to do a public notice around September 19th. Unlike the city, we don't do 2 public notices because we're not a taxing entity, so we just have to put notice that we are going to adopt our budget. And then budget adoption is planned for September 26th, 2019. So it will come back to you in July, and then the next time you see it will be in September. And we don't need to go to those slides unless they have questions.
Okay. Any questions for Rick? Rick, this has been very extensive.
Sorry about that.
No. That's a good thing. That was good for me, even having been here 4 years. I don't think I've had a budget presentation from the CRA staff that's been that extensive and easy to understand. So thank you so much for that.
Move option number 1.
We have 5 speakers.
Oh, we do.
4, I'm sorry, 4.
Oh, okay.
4 speakers on this item. Kay Lenores Barber, followed by Dr. C, followed by Ms. Rosa Morgan, followed by Ms. Sylvia Hubbard. Mr. Barber, if you would come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes, and I figured out the button is going to go from green to yellow to red.
Thank you. Kayla Norris Barber, 650 West Brevard Street. On the budget, there's a city ordinance, number 04-0-60, that stipulates that the downtown district will pay for EMS, MSTU. While there's no policy statement related to Frenchtown is paying all of that to the county. DT is not picking up any of it. That needs to change. Matter of fact, we'd like to see those monies that have already gone, that are already spent by Frenchtown, for DT to come back to Frenchtown. We have a similar situation with indirect costs and cost allocation. The cost allocation for unspent funds for the district is really discriminatory. It favors the DT district over the Frenchtown district. Let me give you an example. For unspent funds, the majority of unspent funds go back into the pot for master funds for the downtown district, while the Frenchtown district gets a smaller share. But in the allocation of the budget and the actuals, the Frenchtown district carries the lion's share. There's something wrong with that cost allocation system. I mean, there's completely, obviously, no rational nexus for that allocation. For large events, we like to see something placed in the, well, actually an equal amount placed in the budget for large events for Frenchtown District. GT gets large events. Frenchtown gets none. So that it appears that one district is valued more than the other district. One more item. The close to $500,000 that was from the sale of the Standard. Actually, when this commission, well, it wasn't this commission, it was the city commission, although you guys sit as the CRA board, there was no restriction placed on those funds. So it's unencumbered, and Frenchtown should be able to use it for anything they want to use it for. And it should not be programmed into the CRA budget or any other budget. Yeah, but we were talking about earlier as being part of pacemaking and whatsoever. So I just don't want us to come back here at this point and place restrictions on those funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barber?
Couple comments real quick.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, two things. And Mr. Barber, I know you're very familiar with this because of the fact that you served as budget director over the county for quite some time. I'm confused about your comment about the EMS MSTU because that has been set at 0.0 for over 12 years. There is no contribution from either one of the taxing districts into it. In fact, there is no contribution because there's not a millage rate associated with the MSTU.
No, that's not true, Mayor.
Rick can respond to that.
If you want
Okay,
to,
Rick,
would you like me to?
I think I'm on. Commissioners, the county used to contribute EMS MSTU because it was 0.005 mils.
Correct.
So they used to contribute millage that, because it's all part of the ad valorem calculation. So in the tax increment that the CRA receives is based upon the ad valorem calculation by the property appraiser. So we did receive that, but we always refund that portion. We received it for Frenchtown Southside because the county contributed all the millage that at their millage rate, which was 8.35 or 8.38. And then we returned that millage, the EMSTU millage, to the county every year. We never received it for the downtown district because the county did not contribute their full millage into the downtown district. So we only took a portion of it. So we had an interlocal agreement that limited their contribution to the downtown district to 4.2698 mils.
Correct.
So we never collected that MSTU for downtown.
Correct.
Right.
And so what he is reflecting in the audit is that discrepancy of the collection versus non-collection, correct?
I don't know. I have to go back and look at the audit. I'm just on how that comment came out. But we can get with Mr. Barber afterwards and kind of go through these points.
Regardless, it's the county's contribution and collection, not the city's.
The yes, it's part of the county's, but the city does not collect the EMS MSTU.
Got it. Right. Thank you. Thank you.
So Wayne, if you all would get with Mr. Barber and get those points clarified.
Yes, sir.
If you would. Next speaker.
I have Dr. C followed by Ms. Rosa Morgan.
I thought I saw Dr. C leave earlier. Did she leave? Okay. Ms. Morgan? Good morning.
It is freezing in here. And as a member of Sustainable Tallahassee Board, we need to address energy efficiency, and this is not it. We're freezing. I have two things I want to talk about. I want to just briefly circle back to the plan, the revitalization plan, and just stress that we really need to have an assessment of where we are and where we have been in the existing revitalization plan before we launch off on adding new goals and other things to the revitalization plan. And we need to remember that the investment plan, the Bond Neighborhood First Plan, and the Frenchtown Placemaking Plan are not a part of the revitalization plan. They have never been incorporated by reference into that. So as we move forward, we need to look at the mechanics of how we do that. And in this budget conversation, I think it's going to be really complicated to track these things unless we ask for, in addition to this very good line item budget that Rick has prepared, that we also do project budgets so that when we talk about funding the Neighborhood First Plan for bond, we can actually see those projects and we can actually see how they're funded. I would also suggest that the CRA board needs to see a 3-year spreadsheet because there are funds that have to be spent within the 3-year limitation, and some of that money rolls from year to year, and it becomes very complicated in how to track the money if you don't see that, and if you don't have a definitive closeout report that's submitted timely on the prior year's budget as you move forward to try to track what rolls and what doesn't, it becomes really complicated. So those are my suggestions. I want to talk a little bit about the greater neighborhood, the greater Frenchtown Southside neighborhood redevelopment plan and the budget for affordable housing, which has been $1 million for the last 2 years. And there was money in the budget in years prior to that. And we have spent zero in affordable housing. And the report, there's an annual report that's issued by staff, and then the 2018 annual report for the year ending September of the prior year. This report came out and was posted in April. The report covers the fiscal year that ended September 2018, and it has a category called Major Expenditures and Commitments to Affordable Housing. In 2018, we spent $0 of $1 million that was appropriated for affordable housing. In other words, we put no individuals into housing as a result of that money. We did spend money. We used $200,000 of that money that was allocated for a demolition program. There were $22,540 that was spent to demolish 2 vacant houses on Saxton Street. The Citizens Advisory Committee asked when that demolition program was approved that when houses were demolished, that replacement housing would be built on those lots. And there is a reference in the annual report that in sometime in the future, homes will be built on those 2 lots. There has not been a report to this board on the expenditure of funds that were allocated for the demolition of the houses other than those 2 projects. There's also a confusing report piece in the report that talks about $140,000 that was allocated, that was approved, $159,000 that was approved for a match for an affordable housing project on Orange Avenue that had to do with senior housing. That was a tax credit application project that was not funded by Florida Finance Housing. On another page in the same report, there's a reference to that match, and it's a totally different amount. It's $425,625.
Ms. Morgan, can you wrap up your comments in that? What I'm going to ask, because what the points that you're making are very legitimate points, and it's information that we do need. But what I was going to ask is if you could get with staff and have them, Wayne, yes, sir, respond to the issues and then bring that back to us.
Okay, my bottom line request for that is that the $425,000 and change be returned to the Affordable Housing Fund, since it's not going to go to that project, since that project goes. My last point is that the annual report has a section called Performance Evaluation. The CRA board needs to do some serious assessment of the CRA operation and how it goes forth. In the example that I picked is the fact that this is a quote from the report under a performance evaluation, despite the fact that no affordable housing was created with the budgeted $1 million, staff determined in its report that the evaluation of this performance measure did not apply since the money was transferred from CRA to the city's housing department. The measure is not applicable. The two affordable housing projects approved for FY 2018, residential demolitions on Saxon Street and matching funds for the low-income housing tax credit project that we talked about.
Ms. Morgan, I'm going to have to ask you to conclude your remarks. It's
Are
not
part of
fair
an-
to
okay.
other speakers that,
Are part of an extended affordable housing effort managed by the city, and therefore the CRA staff claims no responsibility for completing that performance measure since that funding was transferred to somebody else. And I don't think that that's a fair evaluation of how we do our job here. Thank you.
we're going to have staff get with you, Ms. Morgan, if you are amenable to that, to address those issues, and then they will bring a report back to us at our July meeting. Thank you so much for that report. Are there any other speakers?
Last speaker for this is Ms. Sylvia Hubbard. Name and address for the
I
record.
thought I saw her leave earlier, too. Is Ms. Hubbard here? Okay. Any other speakers?
That would be, that
Our last
concludes
speaker?
speakers for this agenda item.
Okay, then that brings us to item 9.02, the approval of special events funding grants.
Mr. Chairman, do you need a motion for 9.01 for approval to accept?
Did we have a,
Made a motion, not a second.
Second.
okay. There's a motion.
Motion for staff
Okay.
recommendation.
There's a motion by the mayor, seconded by Commissioner Matlow. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Do we have any other speakers, Ms. Williams, on non-agended items?
But we're on 9.02 now, and we do have one speaker for agenda item 9.02.
02? Okay.
So I think I would explain the item first.
Okay.
9.02, thank you very much. Good morning, CRA Board Chair and Board members. Staff request is for policy formation and direction for agenda item number 9.02, which is the approval of fiscal year 2020 CRA promotional and special event grant funding for Greater Frenchtown Southside and the downtown districts, and large event program for the downtown district. The agenda item and the details regarding it with the attachments were provided to you in your board agenda packet and uploaded in board docs. Staff is recommending that the CRA board approve option 1 for $185,000 for funding events, $50,000 for the Greater Frenchtown Southside Small, what we call PSE, $35,000 for downtown small PSE, and $100,000 for downtown large events, and authorize the CRA interim director to make any minor revisions or correct scrivener's errors as it relates to the application, the program, and we would like for the program guidelines and application if necessary. The budgeting source for program funds can come from the Greater Frenchtown Southside fiscal year 2020 tax increment funding and downtown reserves. The requested level of funding is consistent with what has been approved previously by the board for fiscal year 2018 and earlier years. As I mentioned, there is one speaker on this item, but staff is available to answer any questions that you may have, questions or concerns that you may have. Thank you.
Board members, are there any questions? Who is the speaker, Ms. Williams?
Mr. Lenore Sparber, I believe.
Okay.
And you'll have 3 minutes, and I can start timing right here.
Actually, I made most of my comments when I was at the podium before, but there's one thing that I'd like to mention. Events for the DT district are actually being administered by the DT district, as opposed to Frenchtown. The events program is being administered by the CRA staff. Here again, it appears that one district is valued more than another district because they get carte blanche, you know, while Frenchtown is getting food stamp card.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. Appreciate your comment.
I would like to try to address that. Okay, while it does appear potentially that we're talking about promotional and special events for the district. In a true analysis, I think we would find is there is not a real apples-to-apples comparison in the districts. The downtown events for the large funding are a little bit
Ms.
different.
Williams, could you speak into the microphone?
Sorry. The large events for the downtown districts typically are events that bring in thousands of people to the district. They're typically held for a successive number of days, and they allow heads and beds, versus the greater Frenchtown Southside smaller events. Typically, those are to help smaller nonprofits, and usually attendance
No, Mr. Barber, we're not going to get,
is like
thank you, though.
50 to hundreds of people, so it's a little bit of a difference in the events and how they're held. When we talk about downtown events, we're talking about things like Springtime Tallahassee, the MLK events, versus a smaller scale event held in Greater Frenchtown, say like a run or a neighborhood event that someone is having. So that is the difference. And there was one other thing that Mr. Barber mentioned when he talked about the administration of the funding, either for the Greater Frenchtown Southside or downtown districts. The CRA staff does now administer funds for both districts. I think we started doing that last fiscal year or the year prior.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Williams? Commissioner Matlow?
Not really a question, just a comment back to the point on the funding for the two different districts. I'm happy to fund events in either district based on what the community wants, but we have a limited amount of funds. So when Mr. Tedder's talking about going to the community and ranking what our priorities are, if it's events in Frenchtown, we can do that, but there's a limited amount of funds in that account. And what I haven't heard from Frenchtown is that they want more events, they want more infrastructure and more physical things. So that's where I'm at right now for that. And just a comment on the downtown events. I know some of the events that we're funding in downtown have been around quite a lot of years, and I want to make sure we're able to rotate those funds if we have some sort of process where it's a diminishing return year after year, so new people can get in and new events as they take hold and build a following and have more of a potential to get private sponsorships. We let new events come in at the same time.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Williams-Scott?
I also want to just weigh in on the larger events, the Springtime Tallahassee, the multiple days, those, the heads and beds, that money goes into our Tourist Development Council, which is then used to fund other events, sporting events, or other things to attract folks to our community. So we want to be careful because we don't want to impact something that's also providing for events. And these events, because I'm on the Tourist Development Council, these events are not restricted to just certain areas.
Right.
So make sure that, and we actually have I think we have an event, Citizen Advisory Council that also helps to feed this information. We want to make sure that we continue to work in collaboration and not in contrast so that we can get these dollars to come to our community, because it's important for us to bring visitors to Tallahassee so that we can reap the benefit from heads and beds. But it's also important to, as we look at our events for Frenchtown, to also look at doing bigger events that will attract folks to be here for multiple days. You know, we have Emancipation that's going to be taking place. I know that there are a number of folks coming to town for that, and we want to make sure with the Riley House as well as others that we make sure that these folks come in and spend money and spend time so that we can get that money to also be used. I will say this, I've kind of been quiet about it because I'm waiting to meet with them. I am hoping that we can do what might be considered a large event, get the homecoming parade, FAMU homecoming parade back in Frenchtown, if not this year, sometime in the future, so that we can reconnect Frenchtown to Florida A&M, which has been a real big historical piece. And so what that entails is that a lot of people do come into town for those kinds of activities. And I'm being told that hotels, and I've said this at the Tourist Development Council, hotels are charging $600 a night for homecoming. And for FAMU, homecoming is not a weekend. it's an experience, and it's a whole week. So there's a lot of money being spent, but people are having to do other things. So I said all that to say this. We need to be careful when we're making contrasts, because what you do here has impact on the other side that will also generate funds that can come back to do some things. So we want to make sure we understand that connection.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Other questions, comments? Okay, is there a motion to approve item number 9.02?
So moved.
There's a motion by Commissioner Matlow, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously 4-0, with the mayor having left the chamber. Okay, are there any other speakers on non-agenda items?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, I do have two speakers on non-agenda items. I have Dr. Hollyfield Dr. Hollyfield and Mr. Bellamy, and it looked like we have another speaker as well.
Mr. Bellamy waves. Dr. Hollifield, you would come forward, please. You know the routine, Dr. Hollifield.
Again, I'd like to say be careful what you ask for. TMH, I'm going to go back to TMH. I mentioned this before because a lot of this stuff never appears in the pages of the Tallahassee Democrat. But again, when you have control over a hospital, and you do, because that's our hospital, and they spend $271 million, over $250 million, and we get back patient safety reports that show that they have received D ratings for 2 successive grading periods. That's something that y'all need to be concerned about. Because you're over the hospital. You don't act like it. I've never seen an audit of TMH Hospital. How do they spend all that money? Marco Bryant, $1.2 million. The last time I checked, and that was 3 or 4 years ago, $1.2 million, and then they turn around and pay their janitors reportedly $9.25 an hour. Well, that's being done in our name. Nobody really wants to talk about poverty, infant mortality, all those inconvenient issues that aren't getting better in Tallahassee. Matter of fact, they're getting worse. But when you think that they have a 20-member board, think about this, 20-member board of directors. I may have mentioned this before. And Elaine Bryant, you know how many women they have, black women they have on that 20-member board? 0. Despite all these high levels of black infant mortality and black maternal mortality. And that's a hell of a lot more important than Springtime Tallahassee, which should really have 0 funding, considering Native Americans. So I'm telling y'all to take a close look at Tallahassee Memorial Hospital and what's going on down the road. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hollifield. Thank you for coming this morning. Any other speakers?
Our next speaker and last speaker is Mr. Leslie Harris. Your name and address for the record, sir, and you have 3 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you. My name is Leslie Harris. I live at 2022 Hillsborough Street in the Providence neighborhood. I've lived in Providence for about 26 years now. And I really didn't come anticipating speaking. I really kind of came to listen, but I felt compelled to just say a couple of things. Okay. One, to remind people that Providence is a CRA neighborhood. I know there's a lot of focus on Bond and Frenchtown, but there are still needs to be met in Providence. So any future plans that the CRA has, I think they need to keep Providence in mind. And I do want to thank the CRA for all of the good work that it's done in our neighborhood over the years, with one example being the development of our community center. Then the next point, and what I just said leads into my next comment, and that is associated with the adoption of Stuckey as part of the alternate airport gateway, and also as making it the designated entranceway to the FSU Southwest Campus and Innovation Park. And I'm here speaking just as a resident. We have an active neighborhood association, but I'm not here speaking for them. I want to make that clear. But I know that there are concerns that what this road is going to do, it's going to spur development. And the issue becomes is whether or not that development is going to be good or bad, meaning is it going to really benefit the neighborhood and the residents in the neighborhood who need help the most. And so I'm here to ask that the CRA, Blueprint, City Commission, and others in local government see this road not just as a road project, but as an opportunity to work together, to collaborate, and address the real continuing needs of the neighborhood. Providence was the second Renaissance neighborhood. Because of that, we have a plan, a neighborhood plan. It was adopted in 2003. It was approved by both the city and county commissions at the time. Again, a lot has been accomplished under that plan, in part because of the CRA over the years, but there are still things that can be addressed, okay? And so this could be one starting point. Sure, there could be other starting points as well to see what needs continue to exist and what opportunities are there to help address those needs. For example, a lot of what's in our plan aligns with what are supposed to be some of your priorities, like I've heard about affordable housing. This plan is open to affordable housing, both single-family home ownership and rental housing. It's open to develop more rental housing along the Stuckey corridor. It's open to retail development along the Stuckey corridor. This plan talks about workforce training. And certainly it talks about crime. All of those things are supposed to be, talks about job creation or through retail development. So all of those things are supposed to be priorities of the city and county commission. So this is an opportunity to not only help the neighborhood address some of its continuing needs, but also to address what you all say as commissioners as your priorities. So that's probably the key point that I want to make here, is that look at this road not just as a road project, but an opportunity to help continue to improve the neighborhood and address the real needs of the neighborhood, not just traffic and that sort of thing, but the real needs like jobs, like workforce training, like affordable housing. And again, those are the 2 points that I just want to make here. And I'm sure at some point, our neighborhood association will be reaching out to the CRA and others with their concerns. But I just wanted to make these 2 points as a resident of the neighborhood. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And Walter McDonald, your president, has been very active, and so he's been sharing the concerns and needs of the neighborhood, not only with the CRA, but with the city generally, and our neighborhood affairs office. So, but thank you for coming and sharing those points.
Mr. Chair, before Mr. Harris goes away, your neighborhood meeting is this coming Monday, right?
Yes.
Okay, I know the Star Metro is gonna be there to
Yes.
gather information. I plan to be there as well, because Providence, y'all are my peeps, as well as all the others. I want you to understand that. But I have not seen their plan. So, if wherever there are already plans, I think we need to make sure we have access to those. I knew that there was something going on because I know your community garden, and they have some of the best greens that I've ever tasted. But your community gardens and some of the other things that you're doing, including the Delta Kappa Omega House in Community Center, I knew that that was a part of something. But I think it's important that we know about all plans that maybe have been worked on or on the shelf that need the dust blown off or whatever, so that we know what we're dealing with. Because I think at my first CRA meeting, when we did the bond plan, I committed to Frenchtown, Providence, and whomever else should come. We want to hear your plan. We want to help make this happen. So I'm still committed to that, but I need to see the plan.
I'll make sure you get a copy,
Thank
all
you.
of you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I'll see you on Monday.
Thank you.
Any other comments from board members? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
There's a motion and a second. We stand adjourned. Thank you all so much. This was an excellent meeting. It really was.